The truck stop off Highway 9 reeked of diesel and desperation. Rain hammered the cracked asphalt as two small figures huddled behind a dumpster, their hollow eyes scanning for scraps. That's when she found them. Or maybe they found her. Maya Reaper Rodriguez wasn't supposed to care. Hell's Angels didn't do charity cases. But something about those twin faces, gaunt with hunger, cracked open a part of her she'd buried years ago. 6 months pregnant and running from her own demons, she should have kept walking. Instead, she crouched down, her leather jacket creaking, and whispered the words that would change everything, "Come with me." What Maya didn't tell them was why she'd left the club, why there was a bounty on her head, why the baby growing inside her carried secrets that powerful men would kill to protect. The twins thought they'd found salvation in a stranger's kindness. They had no idea they'd just become the most dangerous family in 3 states. But when you've got nothing left to lose, how far would you go to protect the only love you've ever known? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The smaller twin, a girl with matted blonde hair, spoke first. "We haven't eaten in days," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain. Her brother pressed closer to her side, his dark eyes darting between Maya's face and the tattoos snaking up her arms. Maya felt the baby kick inside her, as if responding to the children's pain. She'd been hungry once too, cold, forgotten, before the club, before she learned to fight back with fists and fury. "What are your names?" Maya asked, pulling off her leather jacket despite the rain. The children flinched when she moved, but didn't run. Nowhere left to go, she supposed. "I'm Lucy," the girl said. "This is Danny. We're 8. 8 years old, and already experts at survival." Maya wrapped her jacket around both children, their small bodies disappearing under the worn leather. The Hell's Angels patch on the back meant something in this world, protection and terror in equal measure. "My name's Maya, and you're not sleeping out here tonight." She stood slowly, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. The children stared up at her with the wariness of wounded animals, wanting to trust but expecting betrayal. Maya knew that look. She'd worn it herself once. A motorcycle sat under the fluorescent lights of the gas station, rain beading on its chrome. Not exactly built for passengers, especially not pregnant women and twin 8-year-olds. But Maya had learned to make impossible things work. "Ever ridden a bike?" she asked. Danny shook his head. Lucy clutched her brother's hand tighter. "It's scary at first," Maya said, remembering her first ride 16 years ago. She'd been 14, angry at the world, when Tommy Skull Morrison had offered her a way out of her foster home. That ride had led to 15 years in the club, to violence and brotherhood, and eventually to the mess she was in now. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We know where you are." Maya's blood went cold. She glanced around the truck stop, cataloguing exits and potential threats. A trucker filled up his rig 40 yards away. A couple argued by their sedan near the convenience store. Nothing obviously dangerous, but the club had taught her that death often came wearing ordinary faces. She made a decision that went against every survival instinct she'd honed. Instead of running alone, she scooped up the twins. Change of plans. "We're leaving now." Lucy and Danny didn't argue. Kids who'd been sleeping behind dumpsters learned to read danger in adult voices. Maya settled them on the bike, Lucy in front, Danny behind her, the leather jacket still wrapped around their small frames. The engine roared to life, drowning out the rain and the sound of Maya's racing heart. She pulled out of the truck stop just as a black SUV turned into the parking lot from the opposite direction. Too close. Way too close. As they merged onto the dark highway, Lucy leaned back against Maya's belly. "Where are we going?" she shouted over the wind. Maya didn't have an answer. Every safe house she knew belonged to the club. Every contact in her phone was potentially compromised. She was 6 months pregnant with a baby that powerful men wanted dead, running from killers who'd once called her sister, with 2 children who needed food and safety and something that looked like home. The speedometer climbed past 80. Rain stung her face and soaked through her t-shirt, but Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months: purpose. These kids needed her. For the first time since she'd discovered the truth about her pregnancy, she had something beyond her own survival to fight for. Behind them, headlights appeared in her mirror, gaining fast. The real test was just beginning. The convenience store's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects as Maya pushed through the glass door, the bell announcing her arrival with a cheerful ding that felt obscene in the pre-dawn darkness. Her leather jacket creaked with each movement, the weight of her gun pressing against her ribs beneath the worn material. She'd been riding for 6 hours straight, her Harley eating up highway miles while she tried to put distance between herself and Phoenix. The baby had been restless all night, kicking at her bladder and making her nauseous. At 5 months pregnant, she was starting to show enough that loose clothing couldn't hide it much longer. The clerk behind the counter was barely 18, acne-scarred and hollow-eyed from working the graveyard shift. He looked up from his phone long enough to register her presence before returning to whatever game held his attention. Maya grabbed a basket and moved through the narrow aisles, collecting beef jerky, crackers, and bottles of water. That's when she saw them. 2 kids huddled near the magazine rack, pretending to read comic books while casting furtive glances toward the snack aisle. The boy couldn't have been more than 12, all sharp elbows and knobby knees poking through holes in his jeans. The girl was younger, maybe 8, with tangled blonde hair that looked like it hadn't seen a brush in weeks. Maya recognized the look in their eyes immediately. Hunger, desperation, the careful calculation of children who'd learned too young that survival meant making hard choices. She'd worn that same expression at their age, before the club found her, before Razor taught her that family wasn't about blood, but about who had your back when the world tried to grind you down. The boy whispered something to his sister, and she shook her head violently. He pressed closer, urgent now, and Maya caught fragments of their conversation. "Just this once, Lily. I'm so hungry." "No, Ethan. Mama said stealing was wrong. Mama's not here anymore." The words hit like a physical blow. Maya turned away, focusing on the nutritional information on a box of granola bars she had no intention of buying. She should mind her own business. Getting involved with civilians was against everything Razor had taught her about staying invisible, staying alive. But the baby chose that moment to kick, a sharp reminder that some things mattered more than club rules. Maya made her decision. She approached the children slowly, the way she might approach a wounded animal. The boy noticed her first, instinctively stepping in front of his sister with a bravery that broke something in Maya's chest. "Hey," she said quietly, crouching down to their level. Up close, she could see the dark circles under their eyes, the way their clothes hung loose on frames that had lost too much weight too quickly. "You two okay?" The boy's chin jutted out defiantly. "We're fine." "Course you are." Maya glanced around the store, making sure the clerk was still absorbed in his phone. "But I'm thinking maybe you're also hungry, and maybe you've got nowhere to go tonight." The girl, Lily, peered around her brother's shoulder with enormous blue eyes. "Are you a police?" Maya almost smiled. "No, sweetheart, definitely not police." She studied their faces, seeing herself and every lost kid who'd ever found refuge with the Crimson Serpents. "When's the last time you ate?" Ethan's defiance cracked slightly. "Yesterday. We found some fries in a dumpster behind McDonald's." The casual way he said it, like dumpster diving was just another fact of life, made Maya's hands clench into fists. She forced herself to relax, to keep her voice gentle. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, standing and grabbing their hands before they could protest. "We're going to fill up a cart with food, and I'm going to pay for it. Then we're going to figure out what's next." "Why?" Ethan asked, suspicious. "What do you want from us?" Smart kid. The world had already taught him that nothing came free. "Maybe I just know what it's like to be hungry," Maya said. "Maybe I know what it's like to have nowhere to go." She guided them through the store, watching as their eyes went wide at the prospect of choosing whatever they wanted. Lily grabbed a bag of cookies with reverent hands, while Ethan selected practical items: bread, peanut butter, canned soup. At the counter, Maya piled their selections alongside her own purchases. The clerk rang everything up without interest, more concerned with his game than the unusual trio standing before him. Outside, Maya loaded the bags into her bike's saddlebags while the children watched. The parking lot was empty, except for the clerk's beat-up Honda and Maya's Harley, gleaming black and chrome in the security lights. "Where are your people?" she asked as they sat on the curb, tearing into packages of food with desperate efficiency. Ethan swallowed a mouthful of bread. "Dead. Car accident 3 weeks ago. We've been staying in an abandoned house, but some men came yesterday. They were looking for something and they were angry." Maya's blood chilled. "What kind of men?" "The kind with guns." The gas station restroom reeked of disinfectant and broken dreams. Maya splashed cold water on her face, watching pink-tinged droplets swirl down the rust-stained sink. Her knuckles were split open from the fight, and her ribs screamed with each breath. The baby hadn't moved in over an hour. She pressed her palm against her belly, willing the child to kick, to roll, to give her any sign that her recklessness hadn't cost them both everything. When a faint flutter responded to her touch, she exhaled relief that tasted like copper and fear. The kids were waiting by her bike when she emerged, huddled together like abandoned puppies. The boy had found a discarded newspaper and was showing his sister the pictures, his voice too quiet to hear but animated enough that Maya could tell he was making up stories to go with the images. The girl watched him with rapt attention, her thumb firmly planted in her mouth. "You're still here," Maya said, not sure if she was disappointed or relieved. "Didn't have anywhere else to go," the boy replied, folding the newspaper carefully. "Plus, Lily wanted to make sure you were okay." The little girl nodded solemnly, pulling her thumb out just long enough to ask, "Does your baby hurt?" The question caught Maya off guard. She'd grown accustomed to people seeing the leather, the bike, the attitude, not the vulnerable life growing inside her. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but babies are tougher than they look." "Like us," Lily whispered, and something in Maya's chest cracked open. She should leave them here. Should kick the Harley to life and disappear into the network of highways that had become her home these past months. The club would be looking for her by now, and Tommy's crew would be out for blood after what happened at the warehouse. Kids complicated everything, and she already had one life to protect. Instead, she found herself asking, "When's the last time you ate?" Really ate, not garbage from a dumpster. The siblings exchanged glances. "Tuesday," the boy said finally. "Maybe Monday." Maya's stomach churned, and not from morning sickness. She'd grown up hungry too, knew the particular ache that gnawed at your insides until you'd steal food from a dog if it meant one more day of survival. But she'd never been that young, that small, that helpless. "There's a diner about 10 miles north," she heard herself saying. "Truckers mostly. Cash only, no cameras. We don't have any money," the boy said quickly, defensive pride flaring in his dark eyes. "Did I ask if you did?" 20 minutes later, they were crammed into a cracked vinyl booth, watching Lily tear into a stack of pancakes while her brother tried to eat his burger with dignity despite the way his hands shook with hunger. Maya picked at her eggs, hyper-aware of every customer who walked through the door, every car that pulled into the parking lot. "What's your name?" Lily asked around a mouthful of syrup-soaked pancake. Maya hesitated. She'd been using fake names for so long she sometimes forgot which one she was supposed to answer to. But something about the girl's trusting eyes made lies feel heavier than usual. "Maya. That's pretty," Lily decided. "I'm Lily, and this is Jake. He takes care of me." Jake looked up from his food, embarrassment and fierce protectiveness warring across his young features. "Our mom got sick," he said simply. "She couldn't take care of us anymore." Maya read between the lines. Overdose, probably, or maybe just the grinding poverty that wore people down to nothing. Either way, these kids had been on their own for months, maybe longer. The fact that they were still together, still looking out for each other, spoke to a loyalty Maya recognized. Her phone buzzed against the table. A text from an unknown number. We know about the warehouse. You've got 48 hours to make this right. T. Maya's blood ran cold. Tommy worked fast, faster than she'd hoped. 48 hours to return stolen merchandise she'd already sold, to resurrect dead men, to undo choices that couldn't be undone. It might as well have been 48 minutes. She looked up to find Jake watching her, those two old eyes reading her expression with uncomfortable accuracy. "You're in trouble," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Maya slipped the phone back into her jacket pocket, mind racing through possibilities that all ended badly. She could run, lose herself in another state, another identity, but running took resources she didn't have, and time was a luxury none of them could afford. "Yeah," she admitted. "Big trouble." Lily looked between them, pancake forgotten. "Are the bad men coming?" Maya studied their faces, scared but not surprised, ready to bolt but hoping they wouldn't have to. Kids who'd learned that safety was temporary, that adults couldn't be trusted to stick around. Maybe that's what decided her. "Not if I can help it," Maya said, and meant it. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Maya pushed eggs around her plate, watching the yellow yolk bleed across the white ceramic. Across from her, Tommy had already inhaled his pancakes and was working on his third glass of orange juice, his thin shoulders finally relaxed for the first time in weeks. "You gonna eat that?" he asked, eyeing her untouched toast. She slid the plate across the cracked formica table. "Go ahead." The waitress, a woman with steel-grey hair and kind eyes, refilled Maya's coffee without being asked. "You folks passing through?" Maya nodded, one hand resting protectively on her belly. The baby had been restless all morning, as if sensing her anxiety, just heading south. "Well, you picked a good place to stop. Best pie in 3 counties. The waitress smiled at Lily, who was methodically eating her way through a stack of chocolate chip pancakes. "How old's this little one?" "7, Lily whispered, not looking up from her plate. Maya felt her chest tighten. The girl had barely spoken since they'd left the motel, communicating mostly in nods and head shakes. Tommy did most of the talking for both of them, a responsibility that seemed both natural and heartbreaking on someone so young. The bell above the diner's door chimed, and Maya's blood turned to ice. 2 men in leather cuts walked in, their heavy boots echoing against the linoleum. Not her club's colors, but close enough to make her stomach lurch. She kept her head down, hoping her loose hair would hide her face. "We should go," she murmured to Tommy. But it was too late. The taller of the 2 men was already scanning the room, his gaze lingering on their table. Maya cursed silently. Even pregnant and without her cut, she probably still looked like what she was, someone running from something. The man approached their table, his companion hanging back near the door like a sentry. "Excuse me, miss. You wouldn't happen to be Maya Santos, would you?" Her hand moved instinctively toward the knife in her boot, but she stopped herself. "Not here. Not with the kids watching." "I think you've got the wrong person," she said evenly. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "See, that's funny, because I've got a photo here that says different." He pulled out his phone, showing her a picture of herself from last year's charity ride. "Marcus Vega's looking for you. Says you 2 have some unfinished business." Tommy's fork clattered against his plate. Lily had gone perfectly still, her small hands gripping her napkin like a lifeline. "I don't know any Marcus Vega," Maya lied. "Course you don't." The man pocketed his phone. "But here's the thing, he knows you, and he's real eager for a reunion." The waitress had stopped pretending to clean the coffee station and was watching their table with growing concern. Maya calculated distances, to the door, to the bathroom, to the kitchen, all blocked or too far. "Look," she said, lowering her voice, "I don't want any trouble. I'm just trying to get my kids something to eat." "Your kids?" The man glanced at Tommy and Lily with new interest. "Well, ain't that sweet? Marcus didn't mention you'd picked up some strays." Something dark and protective flared in Maya's chest. "They're not strays." "Easy, Mama Bear." The man held up his hands in mock surrender. "No one's going to hurt the little ones. Marcus just wants to talk." Maya knew exactly what Marcus wanted, and it had nothing to do with talking. She'd seen what happened to people who crossed him, who took things that belonged to him. The baby in her belly was his, whether she wanted to admit it or not, and men like Marcus didn't let go of what they considered theirs. "Tell Marcus I'll be in touch," she said finally. The man shook his head. "Afraid that's not how this works. He wants to see you today. And if I say no?" His smile turned predatory. "Well, that'd be real unfortunate, especially for your new family here." Tommy's face had gone pale, but his jaw was set with determination. He reminded Maya of herself at that age, too young to be making adult decisions, too stubborn to back down from a fight. "We'll come with you," Tommy said suddenly. "No," Maya said sharply, "absolutely not. If he wants to see all of us, then we stick together," the boy continued, his voice steady despite his age. "Right, Lily?" His sister nodded, though Maya could see her hands shaking. The man looked amused. "Kid's got spine. I like that." Maya felt the walls closing in around her. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to fight, to do whatever it took to keep these children safe. But she was outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of options. "Fine," she said quietly, "but this stays between us and Marcus. The kids don't get involved in whatever beef you think we have." "Deal," the man said, though his tone suggested he had no intention of keeping his word. The needle exchange clinic buzzed with the usual morning chaos. Addicts shuffling in for clean works, volunteers checking supplies, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Maya kept her head down as she approached the front desk, acutely aware of how out of place she looked among the regulars. Her leather jacket and obvious pregnancy drew curious glances. "I need to speak with Dr. Reeves," she told the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who'd seen every type of desperation walk through those doors. "Is this about prenatal care? Because we can—" "Tell her it's Maya Kozlov. She'll know." The woman's expression shifted slightly at the name, and she reached for the phone. Within minutes, a tall black woman in her 50s emerged from a back office, her face carefully neutral until she spotted Maya. Then something flickered across her features. Surprise, concern, maybe relief. "My office. Now." Dr. Angela Reeves had been patching up bikers for 15 years, asking no questions and keeping no records that could interest law enforcement. Her clinic operated in the grey spaces between legal and necessary, serving a population the system had forgotten. Maya trusted her more than most blood relatives. "Jesus, Maya. When I heard about Tommy—" Angela gestured for her to sit, then locked the office door. "How far along are you?" 7 months, give or take." Maya settled into the worn chair, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. "I need vitamins, prenatal stuff. And I need you to look at 2 kids." Angela raised an eyebrow. "Kids?" "Long story. They're malnourished, probably haven't seen a doctor in years. The boy's got some kind of lung thing, coughs a lot, gets winded easy." "Where are they?" "Safe house." "Can you make a house call?" Angela was already reaching for her bag. "You paying in cash or favors?" "Both, probably." 20 minutes later, they pulled up to the warehouse in Angela's beat-up Honda. Maya had called ahead, and Ben answered her knock with wide, suspicious eyes. "It's okay," Maya said gently. "This is Dr. Reeves. She's here to help." The boy stepped back reluctantly as Angela entered, her medical bag in hand. She took in the sparse living conditions with a practiced eye, noting the sleeping bags, the scattered food containers, the general air of impermanence that clung to people living on the margins. Emma emerged from behind a stack of crates, her thin frame seeming even more fragile in the harsh morning light filtering through dirty windows. Angela's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, the kind of controlled reaction that came from years of treating society's forgotten. "I'm going to listen to your hearts and lungs," Angela explained, crouching to the children's eye level. "It won't hurt, I promise." Ben submitted to the examination with stoic resignation, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he positioned himself between Angela and his sister. Even accepting help, he remained a protector. When Angela pressed the stethoscope to his chest, her frown deepened. How long have you had trouble breathing? It's not trouble, Ben said quickly. Just sometimes when I run or... Ben Meyer's voice was gentle but firm. Tell her the truth. The boy's resistance crumbled slightly. Since last winter, maybe before. It gets worse when it's cold or when there's a lot of dust. Angela nodded, making notes on a small pad. Asthma, most likely, probably triggered by environmental factors, cold air, allergens, stress. She looked at Maya, treatable with proper medication. Emma's examination revealed similar signs of chronic malnutrition, but nothing immediately life-threatening. Angela worked efficiently, checking reflexes, looking at teeth, feeling for swollen lymph nodes. The girl submitted with animal-like stillness, as if afraid that moving might invite pain. When did you last have a real meal? Angela asked Emma. The girl looked to her brother, who answered for both of them. Maya brought us food yesterday. Before that, he shrugged, unwilling to admit just how long it had been. Angela finished her examination and pulled Maya aside. The boy needs an inhaler, probably daily preventive medication too. The girl's iron deficient, vitamin D deficient, showing signs of chronic stress. They both need regular meals, stable housing, and follow-up care. Can you get the medications? I can get samples, maybe a month's worth. But Maya, these kids need more than Band-Aids. They need... I know what they need. Maya's voice carried an edge of steel. Just get me the meds. Angela studied her face for a long moment. You're not planning to turn them over to social services. It wasn't a question. Angela knew Maya well enough to understand that involving the system wasn't an option. Not for someone with Maya's history, and not for kids who'd clearly learned to survive by staying invisible. The boy's inhaler will help immediately, Angela said finally. But if he has a serious attack, then I'll call you. Angela nodded slowly, understanding passing between them. In their world, you protected your own, however you could, even when the stakes kept rising and the margins for error grew thinner every day. The motel room smelled like disinfectant and cigarette smoke that had soaked into the walls over decades. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, watching Lily teach Tommy how to braid her dark hair while the TV droned quietly in the background. 3 days they'd been holed up here, and the kids had started to relax, started to smile. It made Maya's chest tight in ways she didn't want to examine. Her phone buzzed. Razor's name lit up the screen. "Where the hell are you?" His voice cut through the static before she could even say hello. Maya stepped into the bathroom, closing the door softly behind her. "I told you, I needed space to think." "Bullshit. Snake's been asking questions. Says he saw you at that gas station off Route 9 with some kids." Razor's breathing was heavy, the way it got when he was trying to control his temper. "Tell me you didn't do something stupid, Maya." Through the thin door, she could hear Tommy giggling. When was the last time she'd heard a sound that pure? "I don't know what Snake thinks he saw." "Don't lie to me." The edge in his voice could have cut glass. "The club comes first, always, you know that." Maya pressed her forehead against the cool mirror. She did know that. Had lived by that code for 5 years, ever since Razor pulled her out of that halfway house and gave her something to belong to. The wolves didn't just wear their colors, they bled them. Family was everything, and family meant the club. But watching Lily carefully section Tommy's hair, her little face scrunched in concentration, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Something dangerous. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said. "You better be. Church is at 8. And Maya?" His voice dropped lower. "Whatever game you're playing, end it, now." The line went dead. Maya stared at her reflection, the scar through her left eyebrow, the ink crawling up her neck, the hard edges that 5 years on the streets had carved into her face. This wasn't who she was supposed to be. She was supposed to be the woman who rode with killers and didn't flinch when blood needed spilling. She opened the door to find both kids staring at her, Tommy's half-finished braid hanging lopsided. Was that the bad man? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Maya's throat went dry. "What bad man, sweetheart?" "The one you're scared of." Lily's eyes were too knowing for someone who hadn't hit double digits yet. "Tommy and me, we know about bad men. We can tell." For a moment, Maya couldn't speak. These kids had been running from monsters their whole lives, and now they'd attached themselves to another one. The irony was sharp enough to draw blood. "Nobody's gonna hurt you," Maya heard herself say. "I promise." Tommy scrambled off the bed, his braid forgotten. "Can we stay with you? Like, for real stay?" The question hit her like a punch to the solar plexus. Maya had never wanted anything permanent. Permanent meant vulnerable. Permanent meant something that could be taken away. But looking at these two kids, at Lily's fierce protectiveness and Tommy's desperate hope, she felt the walls she'd spent years building start to crack. Her phone buzzed again. Text message from Snake: "Saw you at the diner, too. Real cozy family scene. Razor know you're playing house?" Ice flooded her veins. Snake had been watching, gathering intelligence like he always did. Which meant the club already knew more than she'd told them. Which meant she was in deeper shit than she'd thought. "Maya?" Lily had moved closer, her small hand reaching for Maya's. "You look funny." Maya forced her breathing to steady. She'd been in tight spots before. The key was staying calm, thinking it through. She could go back to the club, spin some story about helping stranded kids find their family, hand Tommy and Lily over to child services, and pretend the last few days never happened. The smart play, the safe play. She looked down at Lily's hand in hers. So small, so trusting. At Tommy, who was still waiting for an answer about staying. At these two kids who'd already been failed by every adult who was supposed to protect them. Maya squeezed Lily's hand. "Pack your stuff. We're leaving." "Where are we going?" Tommy asked. "Somewhere safe." Maya was already moving, stuffing their few belongings into the duffel bag. Her mind raced through options, calculating distances and resources. She had maybe a 12-hour head start before Razor sent someone looking. Maybe less. "What about the bad man?" Lily pressed. Maya zipped the bag shut and met the little girl's eyes. "Let me worry about the bad man." But as they walked to the Harley, Maya felt the weight of her phone in her pocket like a loaded gun. The wolves didn't let people walk away, and they sure as hell didn't let betrayal slide. She was about to find out exactly how much some families were worth. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Margot slid into the cracked vinyl booth, her belly making the fit tight. Jess and Tommy flanked her on either side, their eyes wide as they studied the laminated menus like sacred texts. She'd driven them 40 miles outside Riverside to this truck stop where the waitresses minded their own business, and the coffee was strong enough to wake the dead. "Order whatever you want," she told them, though her wallet felt lighter than air. The money from Marcus wouldn't last forever, and she needed to think beyond their next meal. Tommy's finger traced the pictures of pancakes, while Jess scrutinized the prices with the calculating eye of someone who'd learned early that everything had a cost. The sight made something twist in Margot's chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name but didn't want to lose. The waitress, a woman whose name tag read Dolores, approached with practiced weariness. Her eyes lingered on Margot's leather vest, taking in the patches, the chain wallet, the tattoos crawling up her forearms. But when she looked at the kids, her expression softened. "What'll it be, honey?" Dolores asked Jess, her voice gentle. "Chocolate chip pancakes," Jess said quietly, then glanced at Margot. "Please." "Same," Tommy added, bouncing slightly in his seat. "And you?" "Coffee, black, and wheat toast." Margot handed over the menus, catching Dolores's disapproving look at her modest order. "I'm fine." When the waitress left, silence settled over their table. Around them, truckers hunched over their meals, the occasional burst of laughter punctuating the steady hum of conversation. It felt almost normal, this snapshot of ordinary life, but Margot knew better than to trust the feeling. "Margot," Tommy's voice was small, "are we gonna have to go back?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Jess stiffened beside her, waiting for an answer that would determine whether this was just another temporary reprieve or something more. "Back where?" Margot asked, though she knew what he meant. To before, to being alone. The words hit her harder than any punch she'd ever taken. She looked at their faces, Tommy's open fear, Jess's careful mask that couldn't quite hide the hope underneath. When had she become responsible for these emotions? When had their well-being become tangled up with hers? "No," she said, and meant it. "We stick together." Relief flooded Tommy's features, but Jess remained guarded. "What about the baby?" she asked. "What about when the club comes looking?" Smart kid. Too smart for her own good. Margot sipped her coffee, buying time to think. The baby would change everything. She knew that much. And Viper wouldn't give up easily. He saw her as property, and property didn't get to just walk away. "We'll figure it out," she said finally. "One day at a time." Dolores returned with steaming plates of pancakes that made Tommy's eyes go wide. He dove in with the enthusiasm of someone making up for lost meals, syrup dripping down his chin. Jess ate more carefully, but with obvious pleasure, and Margot found herself smiling despite everything. Her phone buzzed against the table. The number was unfamiliar, but the message made her blood run cold. "Found your bike at Marcus's place. We're coming." Viper. Somehow he'd tracked them this far. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, to the life growing there that complicated everything. "What is it?" Jess had noticed her reaction. "Nothing," Margot lied, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Eat up. We should get moving soon." But her mind was racing. Marcus's place was compromised, which meant they couldn't go back. The motel was out too. Viper knew about her old haunts. They needed somewhere safe, somewhere off the grid, but her options were running out fast. Tommy was telling some rambling story about a cartoon he'd watched, his words muffled by pancakes. Jess listened with the patient attention of an older sister, occasionally correcting details or asking questions. They looked like a real family, Margot realized. Broken and mismatched, maybe, but real. Another text arrived. "Bring our money back and maybe we'll go easy on the kids." The threat crystallized something inside her. These weren't just two strays she'd picked up along the way anymore. They were hers, and anyone who wanted to hurt them would have to go through her first. She signaled Dolores for the check, leaving a generous tip despite their circumstances. As they walked toward the exit, Jess slipped her small hand into Margot's calloused one. The gesture was so unexpected, so trusting, that Margot almost stumbled. Outside, the desert air was crisp with approaching night. Stars were beginning to appear overhead, scattered across the vast darkness like scattered hopes. Margot looked down at the two faces turned up toward her, waiting for her to lead them somewhere safe. She didn't know where that somewhere might be, but she'd find it. She had to. Because families protected each other, and that's what they were now, whether any of them had planned it or not. The safe house smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap coffee, but it was the first real roof they'd had over their heads in weeks. Maya watched Jax pace the small living room like a caged animal, one hand absently rubbing her swollen belly while the other clutched a burner phone. "They found the warehouse," Jax muttered, checking the window blinds for the third time in 10 minutes. "Viper's crew torched it last night." Tommy looked up from the bowl of cereal he was devouring at the kitchen table. "Does that mean they're getting closer?" "It means we need to move again," Jax replied, her voice tight with exhaustion. "Soon." Maya curled deeper into the second-hand couch, pulling a threadbare blanket around her shoulders. The past 3 weeks had been a blur of motel rooms, abandoned buildings, and constant movement. Each day brought new dangers, new reasons to look over their shoulders. But somehow, in the midst of all the chaos, something had shifted between the three of them. The baby kicked, and Jax winced, pressing her palm against her side. Maya noticed immediately. "You okay?" "Just active today," Jax said, but Maya caught the tightness around her eyes. The pregnancy was advancing rapidly, and the stress of running wasn't helping. Neither was the fact that Jax had been rationing her own food to make sure the kids ate enough. Tommy finished his cereal and wandered over to where Maya sat. Without a word, he squeezed in next to her on the couch. It had become their routine, small moments of comfort stolen between the fear and uncertainty. "I've been thinking," Tommy said quietly. About what happens after. After what? Jax asked, though they all knew what he meant. After the baby comes, after we're safe. He looked between Maya and Jax. Do we stay together? The question hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt her chest tighten. She'd been wondering the same thing but hadn't dared voice it. In her experience, good things always ended. Jax stopped pacing and looked at them both. Her tough exterior cracked just slightly, revealing something vulnerable underneath. I don't know, kid. This whole situation is complicated. Everything's complicated, Maya said, surprising herself by speaking up. But that doesn't mean it's not worth figuring out. Before Jax could respond, her phone buzzed. She answered it quickly, her face growing grave as she listened. Yeah, I understand. How long do we have? She paused, listening. 30 minutes. Got it. She hung up and turned to face them. We need to pack. Now. What's wrong? Maya asked, already reaching for their small bag of belongings. Someone leaked our location. Viper's crew is en route. Jax moved with surprising speed for someone so pregnant, grabbing essentials and shoving them into a backpack. Danny's sending a car, but we need to be ready to move fast. Tommy jumped up, his face pale but determined. Over the weeks, he'd grown older somehow, more serious. The constant danger had stripped away the last of his childhood innocence. Where are we going this time? Danny knows a place outside the city, remote, off the grid. Jax checked her gun, ensuring it was loaded. It'll be rough living, but it's safe. As they hurried to gather their few possessions, Maya found herself studying Jax's profile. The woman, who had once seemed like nothing more than a dangerous stranger, now felt like something else entirely. Not exactly a mother. Maya's memories of her real mother were too painful for that comparison, but something close, a protector, a constant. Maya. Jax's voice was gentle but urgent. You and Tommy stick close to me when we move, okay? No matter what happens out there, we stay together. The weight of those words settled over Maya like armor. We stay together. It was both a promise and a lifeline. Car doors slammed outside, and Jax immediately went to the window. That's our ride. She shouldered her pack and motioned for them to follow. Remember, stay low, move fast, don't look back. They slipped out the back door into the grey morning light. Danny waited by a beat-up sedan, his eyes scanning the street nervously. There may be 5 minutes behind us, he said as they approached. You need to go. Now. As they climbed into the car, Maya caught sight of black SUVs turning onto the far end of the street. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she felt Jax's steady hand on her shoulder. We're going to be okay, Jax said quietly. And for the first time in weeks, Maya almost believed it. The car pulled away from the curb just as the first SUV rounded the corner. In the side mirror, Maya watched the safe house grow smaller, another temporary refuge left behind in their wake. But this time, running didn't feel like losing. This time, they were running together. The safe house smelled like stale cigarettes and fear. Maya pressed her back against the peeling wallpaper, watching Diesel pace the narrow living room like a caged animal. His leather vest creaked with each turn, the patches catching what little light filtered through the boarded windows. How long? She asked, her hand instinctively moving to her belly, where the baby had been restless all morning. Until Viper's crew stops sniffing around. Could be days, could be weeks. Diesel's jaw worked as he spoke, the muscle jumping beneath his stubble. Depends on how bad they want what you took. From the kitchen came the sound of cabinets opening and closing. Tommy had been searching for food for the past hour, finding nothing but empty cans and mouse droppings. Lily sat cross-legged on the moth-eaten couch, methodically braiding and unbraiding a piece of string she'd found, her movements precise and mechanical. Maya studied the children, noting the hollow look that had crept back into their eyes since they'd been forced underground. 3 weeks of decent meals and relative safety had put some color in their cheeks, but now the shadows were returning. She recognized that look, had worn it herself more times than she could count. There's got to be somewhere else we can go, she said, pushing herself off the wall with a grunt. The baby chose that moment to deliver a sharp kick to her ribs. Diesel stopped pacing. Like where? My crew thinks I'm dead. Your old man's got half the state looking for you. And now Viper's boys are asking questions about some pregnant bitch who put two of their prospects in the hospital. I didn't have a choice. I know that, you know that. But try explaining it to Viper when he's got a reputation to maintain. Tommy appeared in the doorway, his thin shoulders sagging with defeat. There's nothing, he reported, his voice barely above a whisper. Not even crackers. Maya felt something crack inside her chest. These kids had been starving when she found them, and now she was watching them slip back into that hollow-eyed desperation, all because she'd tried to protect them. I'm going out, she announced, reaching for the jacket Diesel had given her. Like hell you are. Diesel blocked her path, his bulk filling the narrow space between the couch and the door. You show your face out there, and we're all dead. Then what do you suggest? We sit here and watch them waste away? She gestured toward Tommy and Lily, who were both pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. Diesel's expression softened slightly as he looked at the children. Maya had learned to read the subtle shifts in his face over the past few weeks, the way his eyes went from granite hard to something almost tender when he thought no one was watching. I'll go, he said finally, but not until after dark, and we need to talk about what happens if I don't come back. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd lost people before, more than she cared to count, but the thought of losing Diesel and being alone with the kids and a baby on the way made her chest tighten with panic. You'll come back, Lily said quietly from the couch, speaking for the first time in hours. You promised you wouldn't leave us. Diesel turned to look at the little girl, and Maya saw something shift in his expression. When had this hardened criminal started making promises to children? When had any of them started believing in promises at all? That's right, kiddo. I did promise. He crouched down beside the couch, bringing himself to Lily's eye level. But sometimes grown-ups have to do dangerous things to keep the people they care about safe. You understand that, right? Lily nodded solemnly, her small fingers still working the piece of string. Like when Maya fought those bad men. Exactly like that. Maya watched the exchange with a strange mixture of warmth and terror. When had they become a family? When had this dangerous, violent man become someone her makeshift children trusted? When had she started thinking of them as her children at all? The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Maya realized with crystal clarity that she would do anything, absolutely anything, to protect what they'd built together. Even if it meant going back to the life she'd tried so hard to escape. There might be another way, she said slowly, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. But you're not going to like it. Diesel stood, his eyes narrowing. I'm listening. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what she was about to propose settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. But looking at Tommy's gaunt face and Lily's two old eyes, she knew she was already past the point of no return. The safe house smelled like stale cigarettes and fear. Maya pressed her back against the peeling wallpaper, watching Viper pace the cramped living room like a caged animal. Her belly had grown noticeably in the past month, straining against the leather jacket she refused to abandon. The baby kicked constantly now, as if sensing the tension that never left their makeshift family. They found the warehouse, Viper said, crushing her phone in her fist. 3 bodies, all Reapers. Tommy looked up from the comic book he'd been pretending to read. At 12, he'd learned to interpret the subtle shifts in Viper's voice, the way her jaw tightened when death came calling. Does that mean we have to run again? Maybe. Viper's hand moved instinctively to the Glock tucked beneath her jacket. Depends on how smart Blackwood's feeling these days. Maya had heard that name whispered in the dark corners of truck stops and dive bars. Marcus Blackwood, president of the Iron Serpents, the kind of man who settled disputes with gasoline and matches, the kind of man who didn't forgive stolen heroin, even if the thief had been his own sergeant-at-arms. Why don't we just give him back his drugs? Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. They'd sold half the stash weeks ago for food and ammunition. The other half sat buried in a coffee can behind an abandoned gas station 2 states away. Viper's laugh held no humor. Because men like Blackwood don't want their property back, baby girl. They want their pound of flesh, with interest. The floorboards creaked upstairs. All 3 of them froze, hands moving toward weapons they'd learned to keep close. Viper drew first, motioning for the children to get behind her. The baby chose that moment to deliver a particularly vicious kick, making her grunt and stumble slightly. "Stay down," she whispered, moving toward the staircase with the fluid grace of a predator. Despite her condition, she still moved like violence incarnate. The creaking stopped. Silence stretched between the walls like a held breath. Tommy's fingers found the knife Viper had taught him to carry, while Maya clutched a baseball bat they'd salvaged from their last hideout. 3 months on the run had turned them all into different people, harder people. The back door exploded inward. "Federal agents!" Viper spun, firing twice through the kitchen doorway before diving behind the couch. Maya grabbed Tommy's hand, pulling him toward the basement entrance as boots thundered across linoleum. The tactical gear told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't Blackwood's crew. This was worse. "Go, go, go!" Viper shouted, laying down covering fire as agents swarmed through both entrances. She moved with desperate efficiency, but the bulk of her pregnancy slowed her down just enough. A flashbang grenade rolled across the floor like a metallic apple. Maya's world went white. When her vision cleared, Tommy was pulling her through the basement window well. Behind them, she could hear Viper screaming, not in pain but in rage, the sound of someone who would burn down the world before letting it take her family. "We have to help her," Maya gasped, tasting blood from where she'd bitten her tongue. "She told us to run." Tommy's voice cracked with the weight of leaving someone behind. "Again, she made us promise." They stumbled through the overgrown yard, sirens wailing in the distance. Maya's chest burned with each breath, but she forced herself to keep moving. Behind them, the shouting had stopped. That scared her more than the gunfire had. They made it 6 blocks before ducking into an abandoned warehouse to catch their breath. Tommy pulled out the prepaid phone Viper had given him for emergencies, his fingers trembling as he dialed the number she'd made him memorize. It went straight to voicemail. "What do we do now?" Maya whispered, sliding down the concrete wall to sit on the grimy floor. For the first time since Viper had found them picking through garbage behind that diner, she felt truly lost. Tommy stared at the phone like it might offer salvation. She said if anything happened, we should go to the storage unit. She left supplies there. What if it's a trap? What if they're watching it? What if they're not? He met her eyes, and Maya saw something there that reminded her painfully of Viper, a willingness to risk everything for the people you loved. "We can't survive on our own, not with winter coming." Maya pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting back tears that would help no one. Somewhere across the city, the closest thing to a mother she'd ever known was sitting in a federal holding cell, probably planning an escape that would never come. Or worse, the baby would be born in prison, if it survived at all. "The storage unit," she agreed finally. "But we wait until dark." The safe house smelled like stale cigarettes and fear. Maya pressed her back against the cracked plaster wall, watching Razor pace like a caged animal across the narrow room. 3 days had passed since the warehouse explosion, and the walls felt like they were closing in with each tick of the broken clock on the mantel. Lily sat cross-legged on the threadbare carpet, teaching Tommy how to braid friendship bracelets with yarn she'd found in a dusty craft box. The normalcy of it twisted something deep in Maya's chest. These kids deserved princess beds and soccer practice, not hideouts and hushed conversations about body counts. "We can't stay here much longer," Razor muttered, his voice gravelly from too many unfiltered cigarettes. "Viper's got eyes everywhere. That bastard won't stop until he finds us." Maya's hand instinctively moved to her swollen belly. The baby had been restless all morning, tiny fists and feet jabbing at her ribs as if sensing the tension that saturated the air. Where can we go? Every safe house, every contact, they're all compromised now. There's a place, Razor said, stopping mid-stride. Up north, near the Canadian border. Old hunting cabin my grandfather left me. Been in my family for 3 generations. No paper trail, no club connections. That's a 12-hour ride minimum, Maya said. In our condition, with winter coming, better than a shallow grave. His eyes were hard as flint, but she caught the flicker of something else. Fear. Razor was scared, and that terrified her more than Viper's entire crew. Lily looked up from her braiding, her 2 wise eyes moving between the adults. Are the bad men coming here? No, baby, Maya said automatically, the lie bitter on her tongue. We're just going on a little trip. Tommy's small fingers fumbled with the yarn. Like a vacation? Razor's expression softened slightly. Yeah, kid. Like a vacation. The burner phone on the table buzzed. Maya's blood turned to ice as Razor answered with a sharp, "What?" His face went ashen. How many? A pause. When? Another pause, longer this time. Copy that. He hung up and turned to Maya, his leather jacket creaking as he moved. That was Snake. Viper's crew hit the Red Dog Tavern an hour ago, burned it to the ground, left 3 bodies and a message. Maya's throat constricted. What message? Give me the woman and the spawn or everyone burns. The bracelet slipped from Lily's fingers. She'd been listening, of course. These kids had learned to be invisible, to catch the words adults thought they missed. Maya saw her own fear reflected in the girl's dark eyes. Pack everything, Maya said, struggling to her feet. The baby chose that moment to deliver a particularly vicious kick to her bladder. We leave in 10 minutes. Maya, Razor's voice stopped her at the doorway. There's something else. She turned, dreading whatever fresh hell awaited. Snake says there's been chatter. Viper's put word out that you're carrying his kid. The room tilted sideways. Maya gripped the doorframe, her knuckles white against the chipped wood. That's impossible. We never... Doesn't matter what's true, Razor said quietly. Matters what people believe. And if the club thinks you're carrying Viper's heir... He didn't need to finish. Maya understood the implications with sickening clarity. Viper wasn't just hunting them for revenge anymore. In his twisted mind, she was carrying his property, his legacy. He'd never stop, never give up, never let them disappear into the shadows. Mama Maya? Tommy's voice was small, uncertain. She forced her expression into something resembling calm before turning to him. What, sweetheart? Are you okay? You look sick. I'm fine, baby. Just tired. Another lie to add to the growing collection. Help Lily pack your things, okay? We're going on that vacation now. As the children gathered their meager belongings, Maya caught Razor's arm. If something happens to me, nothing's happening to you. If something does, she pressed on, her voice barely above a whisper, promise me you'll take care of them. Lily and Tommy, they don't deserve to pay for my mistakes. Razor's jaw worked silently for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he rarely allowed himself to show. You're not a mistake, Maya, and neither are those kids. We're family now, for better or worse. Family, she repeated, testing the word. It felt foreign on her tongue, but not unwelcome. Outside, a motorcycle engine roared to life somewhere in the distance. Razor's head snapped toward the sound, his hand moving instinctively to the gun tucked beneath his jacket. Time's up, he said. We move now. Maya gathered Lily and Tommy close, their small hands trustingly slipping into hers. Whatever came next, whatever horrors Viper had planned, she'd face them as part of something she'd never had before, a family worth protecting, even if it killed her. The safe house felt smaller with each passing hour, the walls seeming to close in as Maya paced the cramped living room. Her belly had grown noticeably over the past weeks, making her movements more deliberate, but the restless energy inside her refused to be contained. Outside, the rain hammered against the windows in sheets, turning the world beyond into a blur of grey uncertainty. Tommy sat cross-legged on the threadbare carpet, methodically cleaning the disassembled pieces of a pistol he'd found in one of the kitchen drawers. His small fingers moved with unsettling precision, muscle memory from lessons Maya wished he'd never needed to learn. Across from him, Lily sketched in a notebook they'd bought at a gas station, her pencil scratching softly against the paper as she drew elaborate castles with impossible towers reaching toward cloudy skies. "We can't stay here much longer," Maya said, pausing by the window to peer through the blinds. The street looked empty, but emptiness could be deceiving. "Viper's people are getting closer. I can feel it." Tommy looked up from his task, oil staining his fingertips black. "How much closer?" "Close enough." She'd noticed the signs over the past few days. A car parked too long on the corner, the same jogger making rounds at unusual hours, a telephone repair truck that never seemed to actually repair anything. Viper's reach extended far beyond what most people understood, his network of informants and allies spreading like poison through every level of society. Lily's pencil stopped moving. "Are we going to have to run again?" The question hung in the air like smoke. They'd been running for weeks now, moving from one temporary shelter to another, never staying anywhere long enough to feel safe. Maya's pregnancy made travel harder, the constant stress taking its toll on her body in ways that worried her more than she cared to admit. "Maybe," Maya said, settling heavily into the sagging armchair, "but not tonight. Tonight we rest." A soft knock at the door made all three of them freeze. Tommy's hand moved instinctively toward the gun parts, while Lily clutched her notebook against her chest. Maya held up a warning finger, listening intently. The knock came again, 3 short taps followed by 2 longer ones, the signal she'd been waiting for. She opened the door to find Marcus standing in the rain, his leather jacket soaked through and his face grim with urgency. Water dripped from his beard as he stepped inside, his eyes immediately scanning the room with practiced caution. "We've got problems," he said without preamble. "Big ones." Maya's stomach clenched, though whether from fear or the baby's movement she couldn't tell. "How big?" Marcus pulled off his wet jacket and tossed it over a chair. "Viper's not just looking for you anymore. He's put a price on all 3 of your heads. 50 grand each for you and the kids. 100 if you're brought in alive." Tommy's face went pale, but his voice remained steady. "Why the kids? We didn't do anything to him." "Your family now," Marcus explained, his tone heavy with implication. "That makes you leverage. Viper knows Maya would do anything to protect you, which makes you valuable to him." Lily had gone very quiet, her drawing forgotten as she stared at the adults with wide, frightened eyes. Maya wanted to comfort her, to promise that everything would be okay, but the words felt hollow in her throat. In their world, such promises were lies wrapped in false hope. "There's more," Marcus continued. "Word is he's bringing in outside help, professional hunters, the kind of people who don't ask questions and don't leave loose ends." Maya felt the baby kick hard against her ribs, as if responding to the spike of adrenaline flooding her system. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less. They hit the motel where you stayed last week this morning, talked to everyone, showed pictures. Someone's going to remember something, and when they do..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all understood the implications. Maya pushed herself up from the chair, her mind already shifting into survival mode. "We need supplies, cash, ammunition, medical kit, and a car they won't recognize." "Already taken care of," Marcus said, producing a set of keys from his pocket. Blue Honda parked 2 blocks south. Clean plates, full tank. Tommy began reassembling the pistol with quick, efficient movements, while Lily gathered their few possessions into a worn backpack. The routine was familiar now, practiced through repetition born of necessity. They moved like a unit, each knowing their role without needing instruction. As they prepared to disappear once again into the night, Maya caught her reflection in the darkened window. She barely recognized the woman staring back, harder, more dangerous than the person she'd been just months ago. Motherhood had changed her in ways she was still discovering, creating fierce protective instincts that surprised her with their intensity. The rain continued to fall as they prepared to step back into the darkness. Three souls bound together by circumstance and choice, ready to face whatever shadows awaited them. The warehouse smelled of rust and motor oil, shadows stretching long across the concrete floor as evening light filtered through grimy windows. Maya shifted uncomfortably on the makeshift bed, her belly heavy and restless. The baby had been moving constantly for the past hour, as if sensing the tension that hung in the air like smoke. Tommy sat cross-legged beside her, carefully cleaning the components of a disassembled pistol with the methodical precision she'd taught him. His small fingers moved with disturbing confidence, muscle memory replacing the tremor that once betrayed his fear. Across the room, Elena worked at a laptop they'd lifted from a pawn shop, her dark eyes reflecting the screen's glow as she monitored police frequencies and news reports. "Anything?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer from Elena's rigid posture. "They found the safe house in Riverside," Elena said without looking up. "3 bodies, all serpents, and they're calling it a professional hit." Tommy's hand stilled on the gun barrel. "Does that mean—" "It means Viper's cleaning house," Maya finished, pushing herself upright with effort. "Anyone who might know where we are, anyone who might talk." The weight of that truth settled over them like a shroud. Maya had known this day would come, had felt it approaching like a storm on the horizon. Viper wasn't just hunting them anymore. He was eliminating every possible connection, every loose thread that might lead back to his operation, which meant their small circle of allies was shrinking by the hour. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard. There's more. They found Marcus. The name hit Maya like a physical blow. Marcus had been her contact in the Serpents, the one who'd helped them disappear after that first bloody night. A decent man trapped in an indecent world, just trying to survive like the rest of them. Where? Bottom of the Los Angeles River, execution style. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the baby kick hard against her ribs as if responding to her spike of grief and rage. Another death on her conscience, another life lost because she'd dared to want something different. She thought of Marcus's wife, his 2 daughters, who would grow up wondering why their father never came home. "We can't stay here," she said, the words scraping raw from her throat. Tommy looked up from the gun, his young face grave. "Where else is there to go?" It was Elena who answered, her voice steady despite the fear Maya could see in the set of her shoulders. "North, Portland, maybe Seattle. Somewhere Viper's reach doesn't extend." "His reach extends everywhere," Maya said. "You know that. Then what do you want to do? Wait here until he finds us? Until he puts bullets in our heads like he did Marcus?" The harsh words hung in the air between them, truth stripped of comfort or false hope. Maya felt the familiar ache in her chest, the one that came from caring too much about people in a world that punished such weakness. She'd tried so hard to keep them safe, to build something resembling a normal life from the wreckage of her choices. But normal was a luxury she'd forfeited long ago. "We fight," she said finally, the decision crystallizing like ice in her veins. "We stop running and we fight." Elena's head snapped up from the laptop. "Maya, you're 8 months pregnant. You can barely walk, let alone—" "I can shoot," Maya interrupted. "I can think. And I know Viper better than anyone alive." She gestured to the arsenal they'd accumulated over the past weeks. Guns, explosives, ammunition stockpiled like armor against the inevitable. "We have weapons, we have surprise, and we have nothing left to lose." Tommy finished reassembling the pistol with a sharp click, checking the magazine with practiced ease. When he looked at her, Maya saw something that made her heart clench. The same cold determination she recognized in her own reflection. "What's the plan?" he asked. Elena closed the laptop with a snap. "This is insane. We should run while we still can." "Run where?" Maya struggled to her feet, one hand pressed to the small of her back. "How long before he finds us again? How long before we're looking over our shoulders, jumping at every shadow?" She moved to the window, peering through the grime at the empty lot beyond. "My baby deserves better than a life spent hiding." "Your baby deserves to be born," Elena said quietly. Maya turned back to them. These two children who'd become her anchor in a world gone mad. Tommy with his steady hands and old soul, Elena with her fierce intelligence and stubborn loyalty. They'd given her something she'd forgotten existed, a reason to hope. "Then we end this," she said, "before the baby comes, before Viper can hurt anyone else we care about." Outside, the sun was setting, painting the warehouse walls in shades of blood and gold. Soon it would be dark, and in the darkness, predators moved with deadly purpose. But Maya had been a predator once too, and she hadn't forgotten how to hunt. The warehouse smelled like rust and motor oil, fitting for what might be their last stand. Maya checked her weapon for the third time in 5 minutes while Zoe traced patterns on the concrete floor with her finger. Tommy sat cross-legged beside his sister, unusually quiet, his eyes darting between the boarded windows whenever a car passed outside. "They're taking their time," Maya muttered, one hand unconsciously resting on her swollen belly. At 8 months, every movement felt deliberate, calculated. The baby had been restless all morning, as if sensing the tension crackling through the air. "Maybe they won't come," Zoe whispered, though her voice carried no real hope. Maya almost smiled at that. Sweet, naive Zoe. After everything they'd been through, she still believed in maybe. "They'll come, baby girl. Men like Vega don't forget debts." Tommy's head snapped up. What kind of debt? She'd been dreading this conversation, but hiding the truth seemed pointless now. If they didn't make it through today, the kids deserved to know why. The kind that involves your father owing the wrong people a lot of money before he disappeared. The silence that followed was deafening. Tommy's face cycled through confusion, anger, and something that looked like relief. Finally knowing was better than the constant wondering. "How much?" he asked. "Enough that Vega thinks you two are collateral." Zoe's drawing stopped. "What's collateral?" "Something valuable you hold on to until someone pays what they owe," Maya explained gently. "But we're not valuable. We're just kids." Maya's heart clenched. "You're the most valuable things in the world, Zoe. To me, and apparently to people who want to hurt your dad." A black SUV pulled into the lot across the street. Then another. Maya felt the baby kick hard against her ribs, a sharp reminder of what she stood to lose. She'd never planned on becoming a mother, certainly never planned on becoming one to children who weren't biologically hers. But here she was, ready to die for 2 kids she'd known for less than a year. "Remember what we practiced," she told them, checking the back exit one more time. "If shooting starts, you run. Don't look back. Don't hesitate. Get to Diesel's place and tell him code red." "We're not leaving you," Tommy said firmly. "Yes, you are. That's not a request. You left the Reapers for us," Zoe said quietly. "Nobody leaves you behind now." Before Maya could respond, footsteps echoed outside. Multiple sets, trying to be quiet but failing on the gravel. She counted at least 6, probably more, positioning themselves around the building. Professional, organized, exactly what she'd expected from Vega. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Come out and we'll make it quick." Maya typed back, counter-offer, "Go to hell." The first window exploded inward in a shower of glass and smoke. Then the second. Tear gas canisters rolled across the floor, hissing their chemical promises. Maya grabbed both kids, pressing wet bandanas over their faces as they'd practiced, and moved toward the back of the warehouse. "Maya!" Tommy's voice was muffled but urgent. She turned to see armed figures streaming through the broken windows, black tactical gear, faces hidden behind masks. Vega wasn't taking chances. The first shot came from her left. Maya returned fire, using an overturned table for cover while pushing the kids behind a concrete pillar. The baby kicked frantically, responding to her elevated heart rate and the adrenaline flooding her system. "Back doors blocked," Tommy reported, having checked their escape route like she'd taught him. Of course it was. Vega might be a monster, but he wasn't stupid. More gunfire erupted, concrete chips flying as bullets struck the pillar inches from Zoe's head. Maya counted muzzle flashes, at least 8 shooters now. She had 2 clips left. and a belly that made quick movement nearly impossible. "There's another way," Zoe said suddenly. "The storm drain. In the floor, behind those boxes. I saw it when we were setting up." Maya looked where Zoe pointed. A rusted grate, partially hidden under debris. It was small, probably too small for Maya in her current condition, but the kids could make it. "Can you get it open?" Tommy was already moving, using a crowbar to pry at the grate. It came up with a metallic screech that was barely audible over the gunfire. "It's dark down there," Zoe said, peering into the hole. "Dark is good. Dark means hidden." Maya handed Tommy her backup pistol. "You remember what I taught you?" He nodded grimly, looking far older than his 12 years. "Take care of your sister. Get to Diesel. Tell him yourself," Tommy interrupted. "When you catch up." They both knew she wasn't following them down that drain, but Maya smiled anyway. Deal. Another volley of gunfire, closer now. Shouts in Spanish, coordinated and closing in. The warehouse smelled like rust and old motor oil, but it was the scent of blood that made Maya's stomach clench. She pressed herself against the concrete wall, one hand instinctively moving to her swollen belly, while the other gripped the pistol Tommy had taught her to use 3 months ago. 8 months pregnant and hiding in the shadows, this wasn't how she'd imagined her life would go. "I know you're in here, Maya," Viper's voice echoed through the cavernous space, smooth and patient. "And I know you got those kids with you." She closed her eyes, fighting the urge to call out to Jess and Marcus. The twins had become ghosts when they needed to be, a skill learned from too many years on the streets before she'd found them. Or maybe they'd found her. Either way, they were family now, and family protected each other. The sound of boots on concrete grew closer. Maya counted the footsteps, 3 sets, maybe 4. The serpents had tracked them here somehow, despite all of Tommy's precautions, despite the safe house being burned 2 days ago, despite everything they'd done to stay invisible. A crash echoed from the far end of the warehouse. Maya's heart hammered as she heard Jess's muffled cry, quickly cut short. They had her. "There we go," Viper called out, his voice carrying that familiar note of satisfaction that made Maya's skin crawl. "Now why don't you come on out, Mama? We got something that belongs to you." Maya bit her lip hard enough to taste copper. The baby kicked frantically, as if sensing her fear. She thought about Tommy, wondered if he was still alive after the ambush at the diner, wondered if she'd ever see him again, wondered if any of them would make it through the next 10 minutes. "Let her go, Viper." Maya stepped into the dim light filtering through the broken windows. "Your beef is with me." Viper stood 50 feet away, his leather jacket gleaming despite the grime around them. Behind him, 2 serpents held Jess between them, her thin arms twisted behind her back. The girl's face was defiant, but Maya could see the fear in her dark eyes. "My beef," Viper said slowly, "is with traitors and theft. And the general principle that nobody walks away from the serpents without paying the price. I never stole anything from you." "No?" Viper pulled something from his jacket, a photograph. Even from this distance, Maya could see it was the ultrasound image she'd shown Tommy just last week. "You stole from me, Maya. That baby you're carrying. That's serpent blood. That's my blood. And these kids you picked up like stray dogs, they seen too much, they know too much." Maya's grip tightened on the pistol hidden behind her back. "Marcus," she called softly, hoping the boy was close enough to hear. "Remember what we practiced." Viper's laugh was cold. "Oh, we already got the boy too, sweetheart. Found him trying to hotwire a car out back. Kid's got potential." The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of Maya's ragged breathing. She'd failed them. After months of running, of trying to build something good out of the wreckage of her old life, she'd led the wolves right to her cubs. "Here's what's gonna happen," Viper continued, taking a step forward. "You're coming home. You're gonna have that baby, and you're gonna raise it right, in the club. And these kids—" He gestured dismissively toward Jess. "Well, they're gonna disappear. Can't have loose ends. Over my dead body. That can be arranged too." The sound of motorcycle engines roared to life outside the warehouse. Maya's heart leaped. Tommy's Harley had a distinctive rumble, and she'd know it anywhere. But her hope died as quickly as it had flared when she realized the sound was coming from multiple bikes. Too many bikes. The rest of the serpents had arrived. Viper smiled. "Looks like the cavalry's here. Now you can do this easy, or you can do this hard, but you're gonna do it." Maya thought about the letter she'd written to Tommy, hidden in the motel room they'd never go back to. Thought about the names she'd picked out for the baby. Emma if it was a girl, after the grandmother she'd never known. Michael if it was a boy, after no one in particular, just because she liked the sound of it. She thought about Jess teaching her to braid hair, and Marcus showing her how to pick locks, and all the small moments that had made them a family despite the chaos surrounding them. The engines outside cut off one by one, and Maya heard voices, footsteps, too many of them. But then she heard something else, a whistle. 3 short notes, barely audible. The signal Tommy had taught them for when everything went sideways. Marcus wasn't caught, and if Marcus was free, then maybe, just maybe, they still had a chance. Maya smiled at Viper, her hands steady on the gun. "I choose hard." The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Maya sat rigid in the plastic chair, her hands pressed protectively over her swollen belly. The antiseptic smell made her nauseous, or maybe that was just fear. Through the reinforced glass window of the ICU, she could see Tommy's small form buried beneath tubes and wires, his chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. The surgery went well, Dr. Martinez had said 3 hours ago, but the next 20 to 4 hours are critical. Critical. Everything in their lives had become critical, balanced on knife edges and split-second decisions. Maya closed her eyes and tried to block out the memory of Tommy's blood spreading across the warehouse floor, of Diesel's roar of rage as he emptied his clip into the men who'd hurt her boy. Footsteps approached, and Maya's eyes snapped open. Diesel stood in the doorway, his leather cut replaced by a stolen hospital scrubs shirt that barely contained his massive frame. Blood still stained his knuckles, and his face carried the weight of what they'd done to get here. "Any change?" His voice was barely a whisper. Maya shook her head. "Where's Lily?" "Cafeteria. Eating actual food for once." He lowered himself into the chair beside her, the plastic creaking under his weight. "Security's asking questions about how we're paying for this." "Let them ask." Maya's voice carried steel. "I've got cash. Drug money. Blood money. Money stolen from dead men's pockets." Neither of them acknowledged what kind of cash it was, but both knew. In the past 6 months, their family had been built on violence and sustained by worse. Maya had stopped counting the moral compromises somewhere around the 3rd body. "The club's looking for us," Diesel said quietly. "Viper's put word out. We killed 3 of his lieutenants tonight." "Good." The word came out harder than Maya intended. She softened her voice. "They came for my children." Through the window, Tommy stirred slightly, his eyelids fluttering. Maya was on her feet instantly, pressing her palms against the glass. The boy's eyes opened, unfocused and clouded with pain medication, but aware. The nurse inside looked up and nodded toward them. "You can see him now, one at a time." Maya was through the door before the woman finished speaking. Tommy's eyes tracked to her face, and his cracked lips moved soundlessly. She leaned close, careful not to disturb the breathing tube. "Mama?" The word was barely a breath. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." Tears she'd been holding back for hours finally spilled over. "You're safe now." Tommy's small hand found hers, his grip weak but determined. "Lily?" "She's fine. She's eating chocolate pudding and telling nurses how to do their jobs." Maya managed to smile through her tears. "You know Lily?" Something that might have been a laugh rattled in Tommy's chest. His eyes started to drift closed again, but he forced them open. "The men are gone." Maya's voice carried finality. "They can't hurt us anymore." This time, Tommy's smile was real, even through the pain. His eyes closed, and his breathing evened out into natural sleep. Maya stayed beside the bed, stroking his hair, until the nurse gently suggested she let him rest. Back in the hallway, she found Lily curled up in Diesel's lap, chocolate pudding smeared on her chin and defiance in her eyes. The little girl had appointed herself guardian of their makeshift family, and she took the job seriously. "Is Tommy going to be okay?" Lily's voice was smaller than usual. "Yeah, sweetheart, he's going to be okay." Maya sat down heavily, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "Good," Lily said with satisfaction, "because I told the bad men's ghosts that if they bother him in his dreams, I'll come find them and kick their ghost butts." Despite everything, Diesel chuckled. "I bet you would too, little warrior." Maya watched them together, this massive, dangerous man cradling a fierce 7-year-old like she was made of spun glass, and felt something shift in her chest. They were killers now, all of them marked by violence. There was no going back to normal, whatever normal had ever meant for kids like Tommy and Lily. But they were alive, they were together, and tomorrow, when Tommy was strong enough to travel, they'd disappear again. New names, new city, new life. The club would keep hunting, and they'd keep running, but they'd do it as a family. "We should go," Diesel said quietly. "Hospital security's getting nervous about the blood on my boots." Maya nodded, but didn't move. Through the ICU window, Tommy slept peacefully for the first time in months, surrounded by machines that beeped reassurance into the sterile air, safe for now. Protected by locked doors and medical staff, and the bodies of 3 dead men who'd learned too late that some families were worth killing for. 10 more minutes, she whispered. Just 10 more minutes. The warehouse echoed with the sound of motorcycle engines dying one by one as the serpents rolled in. Maya pressed herself against the concrete pillar, feeling the baby kick frantically against her ribs as if sensing the danger. Through the shadows, she counted at least 12 bikes, maybe more. Jake's voice carried across the cavernous space, cold and commanding. "I know you're in here, Maya, and I know you've got my property with you." Tommy's hand found hers in the darkness, small fingers trembling but determined. Beside him, Lily clutched the backpack containing their few remaining supplies and the envelope of evidence that could bring down half the chapter. Maya had taught them well over these past months, when to run, when to hide, when to fight. But this felt different, final. "The kids don't belong to you," Maya called out, her voice stronger than she felt. They never did. Jake's laughter was harsh, bouncing off the metal rafters. "Everything I want belongs to me. You should have learned that by now." She heard boots on concrete, spreading out in a practiced pattern. They were surrounding the area, cutting off escape routes. Maya's mind raced through the warehouse layout she'd memorized during their 3 days of hiding here. The service tunnel behind the old office led to the storm drains, but it meant crossing 30 feet of open ground. "Tommy, Lily," she whispered, pulling them closer. "Remember what we practiced?" They nodded, their young faces set with a determination that broke her heart. They'd been through too much, seen too much. But they were survivors, all 3 of them. A spotlight blazed to life, sweeping across the warehouse floor. Maya pulled the children deeper into the maze of abandoned machinery and storage crates. Her swollen belly made moving quietly nearly impossible, but desperation gave her grace. Another light joined the first, then another. "You're only making this harder on yourself," Jake called, "and on them. Walk out now, and maybe I'll let the kids choose which foster home they prefer." The cruelty in his voice ignited something fierce in Maya's chest. She thought of Sarah Chen bleeding out in that hotel room, whispering instructions about the evidence. Of Marcus, who'd died trying to get them safe passage out of the city. Of all the debts paid in blood to get them this far. "The only choice anyone's making tonight is you," Maya shouted back, pulling the pistol from her jacket. "Walk away now, Jake. This doesn't have to end badly." "Oh, sweetheart, it was always going to end badly for you." The first shot came from her left, sparking off a metal beam inches from Tommy's head. Maya returned fire, the muzzle flash revealing their position but buying them seconds to move. She pushed the children toward the office, her body shielding them as bullets pinged around them. They made it to the doorway when Maya felt the burning tear across her shoulder. She stumbled, crying out despite herself, and saw Lily's eyes go wide with fear. "Just keep going," Maya gasped, forcing herself forward. "The tunnel's right there!" Behind them, she could hear Jake coordinating the search, his voice getting closer. They had minutes at most before the serpents closed the net completely. Maya fumbled with the office door, her injured shoulder screaming in protest. Inside, Tommy was already at the loose ventilation grate they'd identified as their emergency exit. But as Maya reached for it, she heard the distinctive click of a hammer being pulled back. "Touching," Jake said from the doorway. "Really? Playing house with these strays. But playtime's over." Maya turned slowly, keeping herself between Jake and the children. In the dim light filtering through dirty windows, his face looked carved from stone. The Jake she'd once thought she knew, before she'd learned about the trafficking, the murders, the slow poison he'd been feeding into their community, was completely gone. "The evidence is already out there," Maya said quietly. "Kill us, and you're just confirming everything in those files." "Maybe, but dead witnesses can't testify." That's when Lily stepped out from behind Maya, small and defiant. "She's not going anywhere without us." Jake's smile was cold. "Nobody's going anywhere, little girl." The moment stretched between them like a held breath. Maya felt the baby shift inside her, a reminder of the future that hung in the balance. She thought of all the roads that had led here, her mistakes, her choices, the moment she'd decided these children mattered more than her own safety. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Behind her, she heard Tommy working frantically at the grate. "Got it," he whispered. Maya's eyes never left Jake's face. "You want them? You'll have to go through me." "That's the plan." The warehouse held its breath. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, perhaps responding to the gunfire, perhaps just another crisis in a city full of them. Maya thought of Detective Rodriguez, who'd promised to keep watching for their signal, of the safe house 3 states away where they could finally stop running. Last chance, Jake. His answer was to raise his gun. The warehouse trembled as another explosion rocked the building 3 blocks away. Maya pressed her back against the concrete wall, her newborn daughter sleeping impossibly peacefully against her chest, despite the chaos erupting across the industrial district. Tommy crouched beside a broken window, his 14-year-old frame tense as he watched for movement in the shadows below. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, methodically cleaning the pistol Maya had taught her to use, her 10-year-old hands steady and sure. "They're getting closer," Tommy whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant gunfire. "I count at least 6 bikes heading this way." Maya adjusted the baby's blanket, her jaw tight. The iron wolves had finally tracked them down after 3 months of running. She'd known this day would come, had prepared for it, but holding her daughter made everything different. The fierce protectiveness that had driven her to kill for Tommy and Lily had multiplied tenfold with Rose's birth. "Remember what we practiced," Maya said quietly, meeting each of their eyes. "You know the plan." Lily nodded, sliding a fresh magazine into the pistol with practiced efficiency. The scared, hollow-eyed girl Maya had found stealing bread 18 months ago was gone, replaced by someone harder, someone forged by necessity and love into something unbreakable. Tommy pulled his own weapon from his waistband, checking the chamber with movements Maya had drilled into him until they became instinct. The sound of motorcycles grew louder, their engines echoing off the empty buildings like mechanical thunder. Maya had chosen this warehouse specifically. Limited entry points, good sight lines, and an escape route through the storm drains that only they knew about. But she hadn't planned on facing Razor himself, and the radio chatter they'd intercepted made it clear the Iron Wolves president had come personally to settle accounts. "Maya!" Razor's voice boomed from outside, amplified by a megaphone. "I know you're in there, sweetheart. You and those brats you picked up. Time to pay your debts." Maya's hand instinctively moved to the scar on her ribs, where Razor's knife had found its mark during her escape from the club. She'd taken something from him that night, not just the money and drugs, but his reputation. A pregnant woman had outsmarted him, stolen from under his nose, and vanished into the night. Men like Razor couldn't let that stand. "You killed Marcus," he continued, his words carrying the weight of months of fury. "Shot him down like a dog when all he wanted was what belonged to the club. Now his kids don't have a daddy, Maya. That's on you." Tommy's face darkened at the mention of Marcus. They all remembered that night, the Iron Wolf enforcer who'd tracked them to the motel in Bakersfield, who'd tried to drag Lily away while Maya was weak from pregnancy complications. Maya had put 3 bullets in Marcus's chest without hesitation, but she'd known even then that it would bring Razor eventually. The baby stirred against Maya's chest, making soft sounds that somehow managed to be audible in the tense silence. Rose had been born into this world of violence and running, but Maya was determined she'd grow up free of it. That meant ending this tonight, one way or another. Glass shattered as windows exploded inward under a hail of gunfire. Tommy and Lily took their positions without being told, years of survival having taught them to move like extensions of Maya's own will. The family they'd become wasn't bound by blood but by choice, by the decision to protect each other against a world that wanted to destroy them. Maya kissed Rose's forehead and placed her in the reinforced crate they'd prepared, lined with blankets and positioned behind multiple layers of cover. Then she drew her own weapon, the familiar weight of the .45 settling into her palm like an old friend. The Iron Wolves wanted to paint her as a killer, a woman who'd lost her way, but they didn't understand what she'd found instead. "Razor!" she called out, her voice carrying clearly through the broken windows. "You want me? Come and take me!" The response was immediate. Motorcycle engines revving, boots on concrete, the sharp crack of rifles being readied. But Maya felt calm descend over her like armor. She'd been running for 18 months, always looking over her shoulder, always moving to stay ahead of the past. Tonight, in this warehouse with her family beside her, the running stopped. Tommy caught her eye and nodded once. Lily's small face was set with determination that would have been frightening on anyone else's child. But these weren't anyone else's children. They were hers and she was theirs, and some bonds were worth any price. The first wave of Iron Wolves hit the main entrance just as Maya had expected. The real war was finally beginning, and this time she had everything to fight for. The warehouse erupted into violence, muzzle flashes painting the walls in strobing light as the family Maya had built prepared to stand or fall together.